Senator, I would just start by saying you're not a protester if you're throwing concrete
100%.
at
Arrest
law
those
enforcement
people.
officers.
Throw them in the jail. 100%. But what you're doing is something different. Everyone knows this is a political decision, right? So we don't trust that you're using the best interests of the military, certainly, and of democracy on top of that. So have you given the order? That's all I want to know. It's not theoretical. For the U.S. military, not law enforcement. They can arrest all day long. That's their job. Do they have the ability, the uniformed military, to arrest and detain protesters currently today?
In their own self-defense, they could temporarily detain and hand over to ICE, but there's no arresting going on. And you know this better than you're trying to play political games. There's no arresting of U.S. personnel.
Of the U.S. military against members of the protest.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to America First, the channel that puts our nation's interests above all else. Today, we're diving deep into a congressional hearing that perfectly illustrates the ongoing battle between America First policies and the political establishment that's been undermining our country for decades. Before we get started, make sure you hit that like button if you support putting America first, and don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss our content. Also, if you want to support independent patriotic media and help us keep bringing you the truth that the mainstream media won't tell you, head over to patreon.com/America First, where you can support our channel for as low as $5 a month. Every dollar helps us continue this fight for our constitutional republic. Now, let's talk about what we just witnessed in this congressional hearing between Senator Slotkin and our Defense Secretary. What we're seeing here is a perfect example of the deep state establishment trying to handcuff our military and prevent them from doing their job of protecting American citizens. Senator Slotkin, a Democrat from Michigan, is essentially trying to tie the hands of our Defense Secretary and prevent him from using the military to protect our borders and enforce our immigration laws.
Senator Slotkin.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I said in your hearing, when you had your confirmation hearing, that my biggest concern with you at the helm was the potential use of the military in ways that contradict the Constitution or that taint what I hope we all want, which is an apolitical military. And when I asked you about whether you would accept an order that was actually given to your predecessor, Secretary Esper, Trump's SecDef, to deploy active duty troops against unarmed protesters and to, in Secretary Esper's words, shoot at them, shoot at their legs. You said this was all theoretical. Here we are, a few months later, you've deployed 4,700 troops to Los Angeles and against the wishes of the governor. And my colleague across the aisle was right. It is the first time since 1965 that we have deployed Guard troops without the permission of the governor. In all the instances he laid out, the president had sent in the military to protect protesters, not against the protesters. So you may dismiss it, but I feel like this is a fundamental issue of American democracy. If you love your country and you want an apolitical military, then it should be the last resort, not the first resort in our country to use them. So to get to the non-theoretical, have you authorized the uniformed military to detain or arrest protesters in Los Angeles?
Senator, I would just start by saying you're not a protester if you're throwing concrete
100%.
at law
Arrest those
enforcement
people.
officers.
Throw them in the jail. 100%. But what you're doing is something different. Everyone knows this is a political decision, right? So we don't trust that you're using the best interests of the military, certainly, and of democracy on top of that. So have you given the order? That's all I want to know. It's not theoretical. For the U.S. military, not law enforcement. They can arrest all day long. That's their job. Do they have the ability, the uniformed military, to arrest and detain protesters currently today? It's a yes or no thing, authority.
It's sort of amusing the extent to which the speculation is out there. These troops are given very clear orders.
Then what is the order? Then list it out for us. Be a man, list it out. Did you authorize them to detain or arrest? That is a fundamental issue of democracy. I'm not trying to be a snot here. I'm just trying to get the actual, did you authorize them to do that?
All of these orders and what they're sent there to do are public. They are there
so
to...
say it. So say it. Yes or no?
I'd like to.
Please, yes or no?
As I've said time and time again through interruption, they're there to protect law enforcement,
Do they have
ICE
the ability
officers
to arrest?
who are trying to do their job,
Okay.
deporting illegals who were allowed in by the previous
So
administration.
they cannot arrest and detain citizens of the United States, the uniformed military.
As we've
is that right?
stated, if necessary, in their own self-defense, they could temporarily
Okay.
detain and
Have
hand
you-
over to ICE. But
have
there's
you
no
given-
arresting going
have
on.
you-
And you know this better
Have
than
you
you're trying to
authorized
play
the
political
US
games.
military
There's
to
no
use
arresting
cyber
of U.S.
tools
personnel.
of the U.S. military against members of the protest? Have you authorized U.S. military cyber tools to investigate people participating in these protests? Yes or no?
Certainly in no way that I'd be aware of.
Okay, that's good. I love that answer. That's great. Have you given the order to be able to shoot at unarmed protesters in any way? I'm just asking the question. Don't laugh. Like the whole country. And by the way, my colleagues
What is
across
that
the
based
aisle.
on? What evidence would you
It
have
is
that an
based
order
on
like that has
Donald
ever
Trump
been given?
giving that order to your predecessor, to a Republican Secretary of Defense, who I give a lot of credit to because he didn't accept the order. He had more guts and balls than you because he said, I'm not going to send in the uniformed military to do something that I know in my gut isn't right. He was asked to shoot at their legs. He wrote that in his book. That's not hearsay. So you're poo-pooing of this. It just shows you don't understand who we are as a country. Who we are. And all of my colleagues across the aisle, especially the ones that served, should want an apolitical military and not want citizens to be scared of their own military. I love the military. I served alongside my whole life, so I'm worried about you tainting it. Have you given the order? Have you given the order that they can use lethal force against honor? I want the answer to be no. Please tell me it's no. Have you given the order?
Senator, I'd be careful what you read in books and believing it, except for the Bible.
Oh my God. So your former predecessor, I guess that's not enough for you. Okay, on Iran. I don't think there's a debate. There's like a cat fight going on in your own party about whether to go after Iran. Have you commissioned any day after planning? So any force protection, any use of ground troops in Iran, any cost assessments? Because I don't think we doubt what we can do as a country in the attack. It's the day after with Iraq and Afghanistan that so many of us have learned to be so deeply concerned about. Have you authorized day after planning?
As I've said, we have plans for everything, Senator.
Okay.
Let's break down what's really happening here. The Defense Secretary has deployed 4,700 troops to Los Angeles to assist with immigration enforcement operations. This is exactly what the American people voted for when they elected President Trump. We want our immigration laws enforced, and we want people who are here illegally to be removed from our country. This isn't about politics, this is about the rule of law and protecting American citizens. But Senator Slotkin is trying to frame this as some kind of constitutional crisis. She's claiming that deploying military personnel to assist with immigration enforcement is somehow unprecedented and dangerous to our democracy. This is absolute nonsense. The military has been used throughout American history to protect our borders and enforce federal law. The Insurrection Act gives the president clear authority to deploy federal forces when necessary to maintain law and order. What's particularly frustrating about Senator Slotkin's line of questioning is her attempt to equate immigration enforcement with suppressing protesters. These are two completely different situations. When we're talking about removing people who are in our country illegally, we're talking about enforcing existing federal law. These aren't American citizens exercising their First Amendment rights. These are people who have violated our immigration laws and have no legal right to be in our country. The Defense Secretary made this distinction very clear when he said that the military personnel are there to protect law enforcement officers who are doing their job of deporting people who were allowed in by the previous administration. This is exactly right. The Biden administration created this mess by opening our borders and allowing millions of people to enter our country illegally. Now we have to clean up that mess, and sometimes that requires using all available federal resources, including the military. Senator Slotkin's attempt to invoke former Defense Secretary Esper's claims about being ordered to shoot at protesters is a complete red herring. First of all, we have no way of verifying these claims, and as the current Defense Secretary pointed out, we should be careful about what we read in books. But more importantly, even if such conversations took place, they have nothing to do with the current situation involving immigration enforcement. What we're seeing here is a classic example of the establishment trying to use fear-mongering and false comparisons to prevent the Trump administration from implementing the America First agenda that the American people voted for. They want to keep our borders open, they want to prevent immigration enforcement, and they're willing to use any tactic necessary to achieve those goals. The Defense Secretary's responses throughout this hearing were exactly what we needed to hear. He made it clear that military personnel are following proper protocols, that they're not being used to arrest American citizens, and that they're only there to support immigration enforcement operations. When Senator Slotkin tried to get him to commit to not using military cyber tools or lethal force, he appropriately refused to be trapped by hypothetical questions designed to create political soundbites. This is exactly the kind of leadership we need in our Defense Department. We need someone who understands that the military's job is to protect America and American citizens, not to worry about the feelings of people who are in our country illegally or the political concerns of establishment politicians who have spent decades undermining our national security. Let's also talk about the broader context here. For decades, the establishment has been trying to weaken our military and prevent it from being used to protect American interests. They've created this false narrative that using the military for domestic law enforcement is somehow unconstitutional or undemocratic. This is completely false. The Constitution gives the federal government clear authority to protect our borders and enforce our laws, and that includes using military resources when necessary. The Posse Comitatus Act, which establishment politicians often cite to prevent military involvement in domestic law enforcement, specifically exempts immigration enforcement. The military has every right to be involved in protecting our borders and removing people who are here illegally. This isn't about suppressing American citizens or violating anyone's constitutional rights. This is about enforcing the law and protecting our sovereignty as a nation. What's particularly telling about Senator Slotkin's questioning is her attempt to create a false equivalence between immigration enforcement and political persecution. She's trying to suggest that using the military to remove people who are here illegally is the same as using the military to suppress political dissent. This is absolutely ridiculous. People who are in our country illegally are not political dissidents. They're lawbreakers who have violated our sovereignty and our laws. The American people understand this distinction, even if establishment politicians don't. We voted for immigration enforcement. We voted for border security. We voted for the rule of law. And we expect our government to use all available resources to achieve these goals, including military resources when appropriate. Senator Slotkin's concern about maintaining an apolitical military is also misplaced. The military should absolutely be apolitical when it comes to partisan politics, but that doesn't mean it should be prevented from carrying out its constitutional duties to protect America and American citizens. Using the military to enforce immigration law isn't political, it's legal and necessary. The Defense Secretary's refusal to be drawn into hypothetical scenarios about the use of force was also appropriate. Senator Slotkin was clearly trying to get him to make statements that could be taken out of context and used against the administration. The Secretary was right to focus on the actual mission at hand, which is supporting immigration enforcement operations within the bounds of the law. This hearing also highlights the broader battle we're facing between the America First movement and the globalist establishment. The establishment wants open borders, mass immigration, and the erosion of American sovereignty. They're willing to use any means necessary to prevent the implementation of policies that put American citizens first. This includes trying to handcuff our military and prevent it from being used to protect our borders. But the American people are smarter than that. We see through these tactics. We understand that enforcing our immigration laws is not only legal but necessary for our national security and the preservation of our way of life. We're not going to be intimidated by false claims about constitutional crises or threats to democracy. The real threat to our democracy comes from politicians like Senator Slotkin, who want to prevent the enforcement of our laws and the protection of our borders. When elected officials try to prevent the implementation of policies that the American people voted for, that's the real threat to our democratic system. Looking at the broader implications of this hearing, we can see that this is just the beginning of the establishment's attempts to undermine the Trump administration's America First agenda. They're going to use every tool at their disposal, including congressional hearings like this one, to try to prevent the implementation of policies that put American citizens first. But we can't let them succeed. We need to continue supporting leaders who are willing to stand up to the establishment and fight for America First policies. We need to continue electing representatives who understand that their job is to represent American citizens, not illegal immigrants or globalist interests. The Defense Secretary's performance in this hearing shows that we have the right people in place to implement the America First agenda. He stood firm against political pressure. He refused to be drawn into hypothetical traps, and he made it clear that the military will continue to support immigration enforcement operations as authorized by law. This is exactly what we need to see from our government officials. We need people who are willing to stand up to the establishment, who understand their constitutional duties, and who are committed to putting America first. The Defense Secretary demonstrated all of these qualities in his responses to Senator Slotkin's questioning. As we move forward, we can expect more hearings like this one. The establishment isn't going to give up easily. They're going to continue trying to use congressional oversight as a weapon to prevent the implementation of America First policies. But as long as we have leaders who are willing to stand firm and fight for our principles, we can overcome these obstacles. The key for all of us as patriots is to continue supporting these efforts. We need to make sure our representatives know that we support immigration enforcement, border security, and the use of all available federal resources to protect American citizens. We can't let the establishment's fear-mongering and false narratives deter us from demanding the enforcement of our laws. This hearing also demonstrates the importance of having independent media sources that are willing to tell the truth about what's happening in Washington. The mainstream media will undoubtedly spin this hearing to make it look like the Defense Secretary was being evasive or that there are legitimate concerns about the use of military force. But those of us who watch the actual hearing know that the opposite is true. That's why channels like America First are so important. We're here to give you the real story, not the establishment spin. We're here to defend America First policies and to hold our leaders accountable when they stand up for American citizens. And we're here to expose the tactics that the establishment uses to try to undermine our democracy and our sovereignty. So remember, patriots, this fight is far from over. The establishment is going to continue trying to prevent the implementation of America First policies. They're going to continue using congressional hearings, media narratives, and legal challenges to try to stop us. But as long as we stay united, as long as we continue supporting leaders who put America first, and as long as we continue demanding the enforcement of our laws, we will prevail. Don't forget to like this video if you support putting America first, subscribe to our channel for more content like this, and head over to patreon.com/America First to support independent patriotic media. Together, we can ensure that America remains a sovereign nation that puts its citizens first. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.